The shrimp was rubbery, flattened beneath my fork. My mother had overcooked it, her anxious hands working too quickly over the stove, as if the more she did, the more problems she'd fix. The conversation was going nowhere, but the tension clung to the air like a wet sheet. My brother Kevin leaned back in his chair and stretched, knuckles popping loud as gunshots, and the sound jerked me out of my thoughts. "So Ellie, what happens if the art thing doesn't work out?" Kevin grinned at me, his mouth full of rice. His wife Darla suppressed a smirk. Even my little cousin, Candice, only 12 years old, seemed to understand that I was tonight's sacrifice. Dad lifted his gaze from his plate and wiped his mouth with a paper napkin. I tensed for whatever would follow. "Maybe it's time you started looking for real work," he said, quietly but firmly, as though he wasn't sure he could handle another blow-up. "You could get something at the insurance office with Kevin, they're always hiring, and you're good with people, Ellie." Mom tried to rescue me, sliding the bowl of green beans my way, her eyes pleading with me to just let it go. I took some, more out of politeness than appetite. "I don't want to work at an office, Dad," I said, keeping my voice soft. "I'm a painter, that's what I want." There was a short, stunned laugh from the end of the table, from Aunt Rhonda. "We all want things, honey, but that's just not how the world works." My Uncle Frank, Kevin's father-in-law, fished in. "Ellie, talent's one thing, but success, that's a whole other ball game." Kevin jabbed his fork toward me. "Be real. You're 26, you don't have time to just float around painting sunsets on Melrose." "I'm not just painting sunsets on Melrose." "Then what are you painting, and who buys it?" No one said anything after that. My cheeks prickled. I wanted the room to go silent, but also wanted everyone to say something, anything different. Outside, it was already dusk, an oily blue washing over the glitter of Lowe's angels from our apartment in Glendale. The freeway's hum was a distant lull, but every word from my family thudded in my chest like a dropped book. "I'm going to make it," I said, not looking up. When I finally did, their faces blurred at the edges. My mother's worry, my father's confusion, my brother's mocking grin. I just needed them to give me a sliver of trust, but there was none. Kevin snorted. "Well, you let us know when you're the next Banksy. Maybe then we'll eat our words." That night I sat at the edge of my bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the neighbors arguing above and a stray cat crying below. I thought maybe I could quit. Maybe I could just give up quietly, slide my paints into the closet and let them dry out in the dark. But when I closed my eyes, images pushed back, shapes, colors, lines demanding space. I'd never be at peace with surrender. Even if they kept laughing, even if every show ended empty, I'd keep painting because it was the only thing I was good at, and the only thing that felt like mine. The next morning, I left the apartment before dawn, tossing my rucksack of paints and canvases into the back of my battered Honda. The city was still sleeping, only the serious or the lost awake storefronts bathed in fresh gold. I drove to a friend's studio in Silver Lake, the same place I'd worked for 3 years, piecing together art classes and commissions that never went past exposure. I painted there for 12 hours, my arms aching from stretching canvas, my head light from turpentine fumes. Not every day was this pure focus. Most days brought bills with their slow terror, rejections piling up like discarded sketches, messages from family asking if I'd thought more about real life. But there were hours, sometimes minutes, when the world hushed and painting became a portal. My hands were steady, sure. My heart stopped racing. That spring, I entered a juried show in Culver City. I spent my last $100 on a custom frame. The night before the drop-off, I repainted the whole canvas, convinced it wasn't good enough. I submitted the piece with a ghost of hope, but 2 weeks later, a polite email let me know my work was not selected, but thank you for your submission. I cried alone in my car in a Ralph's parking lot. My hands shook as I texted Kevin, my finger hovering over the send button, about to say, "You win, I'm done," but I didn't. There was still too much left inside. I took on more gigs, painting murals for taco shops, baby room walls for tired parents, and once, a whole fence for a man who offered me $300 and a six-pack of Modelo. None of this made it to my Instagram, but it paid for canvas and groceries when nothing else did. Each time I showed my work, I got the same look from relatives, patient, patronizing, a touch of sadness, as if they were watching me walk deeper into quicksand. A year became 2. I stopped expecting the phone to ring after I sent out portfolios. I learned that success isn't a parade, sometimes it's just surviving another year. Sometimes it's finding the money for new brushes instead of groceries and making it work. 3 summers later, it was just me and the city. I had a part-time job at an art supply store, my car was on its last legs, and I still hadn't sold a painting for more than a couple $100. My bedroom was part studio, part mausoleum of half-finished canvases. Friends from college had traded art degrees for jobs in public relations, marketing, anything that paid the rent comfortably. There was an email one sluggish Thursday afternoon. I'd almost deleted it, thinking it was more spam. Emerging LA artists call for solo show proposals. My first reaction was scorn. I'd applied to these before. They always wanted 5 paintings and a $35 entry fee, and all I had was a battered debit card and fading hope. But that night, as rain loosened the grime from the street outside, I pulled 5 pieces from my stacks. I photographed them beneath the yellow light bulb in my closet. I wrote a proposal, raw and messy and true. I told them about painting in the city, about rejection, about breathing oil fumes and chasing dawn. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Weeks blurred. I almost forgot, absorbed by deadlines and patched tires and the reckless cost of living. Then another email, this one polite with an official logo. Congratulations. Your proposal has been accepted. Please come in to discuss. I sat on the floor staring at the screen. I tried to breathe. Then I texted my mom but left out the details. I'd learned not to announce hope too early. The meeting was in a little gallery on Fairfax. I wore my only clean pair of jeans and a paint-stained army jacket. The space was colder than it looked online, white walls and concrete, but the gallery manager, Marisol, smiled and walked me through the details. They'd cover the framing, the press release, even a modest stipend. I would have the whole space for a month. Real people would see my work, critics, buyers. I called my parents from the parking lot after the meeting. My mom whispered my news to my father as if saying it louder might startle it away. You got your own show, my dad repeated, like a real art gallery. Yeah, Dad, it's on Fairfax, it's real. He was quiet for a moment. Okay. That's impressive, kid. Are you and Mom gonna comes? We'll see. His voice carried all the years of struggle and skepticism. Let us know when. I spent 3 months prepping. I painted in every spare hour, going to work, coming home, painting, eating, sleeping. I ignored friends, turned down invitations, became a ghost to my own body. When the opening night came, I stood in that gallery with knees that trembled and a heart that wouldn't slow, staring at everything I'd made. The walls glowed with color. The summer sunset spilled gold across each frame. Strangers walked among my work, tilting their heads, asking questions. Some nodded, scribbled in notepads. A man in a suit offered me a business card. Marisol pressed a glass of white wine into my shaking hand. By the midpoint of the night, a painting had sold for more money than I'd ever made in a week, then another, and a third. By the end, half the show was spoken for. I watched stickers appear beside the tags, red dots shining like small lanterns. But still, my family hadn't arrived. I wandered to the bathroom and pressed my forehead to the cool tile. It's okay, I told myself. You did it, even if they're not here. But then, laughter echoed from the gallery's entrance. A burst of familial noise, my mother clutching her purse, red-eyed from crying or the LA smog. My father in his old office suit, still rumpled from work, Kevin and Darla. Aunt Rhonda and Uncle Frank, even Candace trying to look cool in 2 big boots. There's our artist, Kevin called, and for a moment I braced myself for the old joke. But when I saw their faces, the mockery was gone, replaced by something else. Uncertainty, amazement, hope blooming under old disappointment. Mom came up and squeezed my shoulders, her grip so tight I almost winced. This is beautiful, Ellie, she said, barely above a whisper. Dad stepped back, taking in each piece. He stopped at the painting I'd almost thrown away last year, A Street at Dusk, headlights blurring in the rain. He reached out, fingers hovering inches from the frame, then tucked his hands into his pockets. I could see him searching for something to say, words that would cross the chasm of years and repetition. He cleared his throat. I always knew you were talented. I just didn't know it could be this real. Behind him, Kevin nodded, scanning the crowd. How many did you sell? He asked, looking almost nervous. 6 tonight, I said, swallowing hard. He blinked. 6 paintings tonight. I got offers for 2 commissions too. For a moment the family stood there, circling each other. The sound of the gallery returned, the quiet swirl of voices, the clink of glasses, the careful admiration of strangers. It was as if a curtain had lifted. Suddenly my father looked at me, eyes damp, his throat working as he tried to find words that had never come easy. You really did it, Ellie, he said softly. I took a shaky breath. I told you I would. Later, the family moved through the gallery together. Aunt Rhonda stopped to read every description. Uncle Frank pointed out shadows in my nightscape, telling Candace how the colors shifted, how not everyone could see the world this way. Mom drifted along the wall with me, resting her hand at my elbow. I felt both taller and smaller, grateful and overwhelmed. Outside, the night was warm. Steam rose from the pavement, headlights slid by. Dad hung back as the others went to get food, his silhouette outlined by the glow of the gallery sign. "I've been thinking," he said, "about that night at dinner, the last time." "I remember." He shook his head as if trying to banish the memory. "I worry, Ellie, that I'd pushed you into being someone else. I just didn't want you to get hurt. This world," he gestured vaguely to the city, "it's not always kind." I smiled gently. "I know, but it's worth it, Dad." He nodded, pulling me into a bear hug. "You came back," he whispered. "And you brought something with you." When I closed my eyes, I heard the city's heartbeat. I tasted the night air, electric and alive. My family's doubts no longer had weight. The years of rejection, of struggle, had led me here, home, and yet changed. As we walked together to the little Thai place next door, the neon lights hummed like a blessing. Every laugh, every story told at that table tasted sweeter because of what it had cost me. I watched my family marvel at the art, at me, at all that was possible, and felt, for the first time, that I truly belonged. The next morning, I packed away the labels and empty frames, the sags of bubble wrap ready for the next show. The work would never stop, doubt would rise again, bills would haunt my mailbox, and the world would try to shrink my dreams. But now I knew the difference between being alone and being understood. I knew that every brushstroke was a step forward, and maybe years from now, when someone else stared down their own crowded dinner table, they'd hear a story like mine and know they could return to, not unchanged, but unbroken, carrying something beautiful from the wilderness of their own resilience.